Your thoughts on kind of why this topic matters, the topic of priests, clergy, Catholic leaders navigating recovery.
Yeah, and I think it really extends to like anybody involved in their church community, right? Like youth ministers can go through the same thing, people that are focus missionaries or other campus ministers, just really anyone who is in kind of an exterior, it can just come from like it can exist like in a family where mom and dad are just really involved in the parish. And so why is it? It's important, I think, mainly because it's at the end of the day, like our salvation is important and being free from sin is important and having a real conversion is important. And that has to be the first and primary thing. I often talk about the order of love that we have to be like a son first, then a spouse, then a parent, which means like I have to be in relationship with our Lord first. I have to be a child of God first. I have to keep my baptismal promises first.
Hmm.
And then there's going out into the world to share with others what I've received from the Lord. And I think when people aren't in recovery, they're just sharing an idea about Christ instead of sharing their relationship with Christ,
Yeah.
or we can end up giving advice to people that we hope will work for us but hasn't yet, and there can be a lack of certitude about that. And over time more and more discouragement and despair can set in.
Hmm.
And so the farther along we get, like whenever I'm working with seminarians, like the best time to get into recovery is before you go to the seminary, of course. But then it's like immediately when you enter. And then the longer you wait and the closer you get to ordination, and this is part of my own story, the closer you get to ordination, the more shame builds up in your heart, and then you're more and more afraid of getting help. And so getting help like as soon as possible, um I just think is incredibly important. And I think this applies also to like counselors, and maybe more so for faith-based counselors than other counselors. I don't know, but I think there can be a lot of pressure on like Catholic counselors to have it all together and have it all together in their spiritual life, and to try to like, you know, be putting themselves out there because they're almost using it for their marketing. Um, so that if they need help, where do they go?
Hmm.
And these things all kind of get built in. So one of the questions like that people always ask is, are there special meetings for these special groups of people? So like, what do you think about that? About having special meetings for church leaders, or special meetings for therapists, or special meetings for doctors?
Yeah, I know this is a topic that we've discussed before, but I tend to think that the more we put ourselves on a pedestal, which can be really detrimental, to think that we're in some ways special. Now, as alluding back to the childlike faith of a child who has this, is very aware of their inherent worth and their dignity. I'm not saying that we have no dignity if we're not special, but to be treated in some kind of a unique way, or to be almost believe that our circumstances are unique, that we need some kind of special type of meeting, can be quite damaging, and it can be isolating, and can be,
Hmm.
we might think that we've got some kind of special kind of powers or circumstances that make us unique. Of course, we are all unique in some ways, and we're also we can become terminally unique in thinking that we are special to a degree that no one else will really understand. I think there is value certainly in having some alignment with people who are in a similar situation. Even just meeting someone else who's on the road, who's also in recovery, like that moment when you realize that someone else is like in a 12-step recovery program that you might just either meet on the street, or know but didn't know this before, and there kind of becomes this close connection that kind of like if you find someone else who's Catholic, or if you just randomly have to come across someone who's a
Hmm.
priest. Now that you are wearing your collars, there might be like a fraternal kind of connection there. So I think there is some value there. But, of other flight or pilots, doctors, lawyers, priests, counselors, people who maybe think that they are specialists in some way. Yeah, I think that it can be, if you're only going to meetings that are specialized meetings with special circumstances of people, I think that might be quite detrimental. What are your thoughts?
I think the same thing. I think I went through the gamut of experimenting over the last 10 years with, okay, so we'll have like a group for seminarians, or a group for Catholic leaders, or a group for, and even just having like a group for Catholics versus like going to whatever, like the traditional group. And it almost always seemed to fall short. And something I had to realize about myself was that like my addiction really has nothing to do with me being a priest. Like it existed before I was a priest. And like I would have quit drinking 6 years ago, whether I was a priest or not, I would have ran out of drink tickets. And then my other addictions, like they started like way before I went to the seminary. And so it's not like something that started in my priesthood or that like is because of my priesthood. And so it really like is about Sean being in recovery and the entirety of my life, right? Which includes the fact that I was ordained and I became a priest. But like I have to be in recovery because it's just part of my story. The soil that my addiction grew out of, that soil was tilled like way before I went to the seminary.
Mm.
And so it can be helpful to connect with that. And again, because like our Lord desires to convert us, and I think recovery is a tool for conversion. It can be a tool for falling in love with our Lord and a tool for keeping our baptismal promises, like however we want to word it. And it kind of gives us a chance to start over again from the beginning, right? Not to start like, I need to get into recovery because of what happened last week. It's I need to get into recovery because of the last like 25 years of my life. And I was thinking about this with like Saints Peter and Paul. The feast of Saints Peter and Paul was Sunday. And I was thinking about like moments of conversion in Peter and Paul's life and how like Paul has this like encounter with our Lord's divinity and our Lord appears to him in his glory after the resurrection on the road to Damascus. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. And he's sort of, we always say he got knocked off his horse, which I think is just attributed to the way that one artist drew it.
Hmm.
But it's kind of like I was overwhelmed by this moment and his life has changed. Peter, on the other hand, first encounters our Lord in his humanity as our Lord just jumps in his boat and starts preaching. And then Peter's like, get away from me, I'm a sinful man. And then our Lord says, come follow me, I'll make you a fisher of men. And then Peter's like, well, maybe he doesn't know I'm such a bad sinner and I'm going to follow him. And he's kind of always like back and forth and saying, no, Lord, I will never deny you. No, you're going to deny me 3 times. I will die for you. You're going to deny me 3 times. But once you've returned, you must strengthen your brethren. And then there's this moment after the resurrection takes place when Peter says, I'm going fishing. And it's almost like I'm going to go back to what I was doing before Jesus entered into my life. And then when our Lord encounters him on the Sea of Galilee and he goes to him and our Lord asks him those questions, do you love me more than these 3 times? He doesn't call him Peter, which is interesting. Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? And so like our Lord is reminding him that like, I'm the same one who called you, like when I got in your boat. And my desire for your conversion goes all the way back to who you've always been. And it's almost like when priests or religious maybe get into recovery, but their recovery kind of has to go back to using their baptismal name instead of their religious name.
Yeah.
Like there might be a religious in recovery, but when they go to their 12-step meeting, they don't say, my name is Sister Magdalene Maria of the Sacred Heart of Jesus or something. They just say like, my name's Jane, because like Jane needs to be in recovery. It's just an interesting thing that our Lord does there. And so when, again, whether we're like priest, seminarian, missionary, person who's really involved in our parish, like the difficulty is sometimes when we can let our positions of leadership get in the way of just approaching our Lord like, I'm Sean, I'm a sexaholic, or I'm Sean, I'm an alcoholic, or I'm Bob and I'm an overeater.
Mm-hmm.
We just have a hard time going to our Lord and just saying like, this is me and I need you.